Oh, hey guys, happy weekend. How many of you are like me and are old enough to remember them very old external drive, condensing units? External drive condensing units that were used to, refrigerate the commercial cooler of maybe a convenience store, maybe a commercial cooler of any kind, or in this case maybe the cooler or freezer of an apple orchard facility. I mean, in this case. So anyway, that's going to be kind of the topic of this discussion tonight. I remember when I was a kid, I think I was 5 or 6 years old at the time. I mean, it's just at a time where, these obsessions maybe fans, motors, and other off the wall topics were just prospering in my brain. And we of course, as I may have mentioned, we visited this apple orchard, and at the time we were living in Illinois. I think it was Roscoe, Illinois, or somewhere along in that area, and we actually toured an apple orchard. More than once. Not too far from that location, perhaps. And what sticks out in my mind the most is the condensing units to the facility that really caught my mind. It's just, I remember condensers, the condensing units. I think there was this one with kind of an overhanging, caged area with this condenser, open bladed fan, and I think it was a long condenser with a big compressor, and there was another condensing unit right in, I think in the basement of a building, and of course it had of course it was a condenser, big compressor directly in the back, and of course the fan, directly behind the condenser. Of course, the grill of the fan had very little protection to it at all. Kind of them really ancient, tabletop fans or what have you, grill with very little protection. And of course, and the condenser was placed in this opening, and it's, and of course in the opening was in this other big room, I guess, to suck in the air through the other room or something like that. But that's the best I can remember. And the condensing unit in the basement was kind of similar to a condensing unit that I saw at the Tellico fish hatchery when I was a teenager back in 1989, and had this antique condensing unit at the Tellico fish hatchery, and not sure what it refrigerated, but of Of course, it was like, gone after a year or so, so I don't know what in the world they use it for. And I saw other condensers way back when similar to that, but the condenser, at the apple orchard that, was the most appealing to me is it was like an external drive condensing unit. I mean, it's, of course, them very old external drive, condensers, like, of course, had a motor, a shaft around the motor, and attached to the shaft, well, that turned the belt of the system. Attached to the shaft of the motor was a fan blade for ventilation of, like, the condenser, and, and it, like, turned a belt that's attached to, like, a bigger shaft that was connected to the compressor. So, it's, of course, pretty much all modern day condensing units have, like, an internal, like, a rotor compressor, but way back in the day, there were still these, store units with a compressor that was like, had the mechanism of a spinning outside, shaft, controlled by a motor to the side, and, kind of like them really old air compressors, and still think some of the big air compressors are like that, but most of the modern day compressors are internal drive, and kind of like modern day condensing units are internal drive, but they way back in the day they had external drive, like compressors, and of course motor with the pulley with a fan blade attached to the pulley that was a condenser fan, and it's and a belt attached to a bigger pulley that activated the compressor. And it's funny because that's a external drive condensing unit was like actually like in a recess of the facility, and I think it had like a big old grate that went over it, and it made a lot of noise, and the motor of the unit was like pretty visible to me, and I thought, gosh, that motor is making a lot of noise, and that motor looks scary making all that noise, when it was really, probably the motor and like, the compressor, a combination of each. It's, if you ever heard the sound of like, an air compressor or something like that, the throbbing piston sound, that's what it sounded like, and thought it was just made by that, motor, and I thought that made the motor kind of scary looking. I thought it was the motor making all that noise, which probably was a whole system, of course. It was apparently used, for one of the big freezers or big coolers for the merchandise. But that big, external drive condenser that I remember at that apple orchard in the recess of that building, really appeals to me, and just it's like, a bookmark to my memory, and kind of reminds me of when things were actually made good. Those were the good old days when, appliances and like, and other, like, important necessities were built with quality. And of course, I mean, that would have been like, condensing unit built with quality. And I just thought it was really fascinating how it works. So that's like, a very appealing, flashback scene in my memory, so to speak. And, and, I mean, them external drive, condensing units are virtually non-existent nowadays. I mean, they're obsolete, and I mean, there might still be some ancient ones, like, still in use that haven't been, replaced out yet, but that's probably few and far between. I mean, they're obsolete and virtually non-existent nowadays, and, but I kind of, think about it, I just kind of think it's pretty fascinating how they worked. I mean, all external drive, and, kind of like, a total throw-off from, I mean, a real modern day, equipment, which makes it more interesting and stuff like that. And, so anyway, I'm going to post a link to a video. And this video is not my video. I mean, I'm not trying to, commit any, copyright violations or anything like that. I'm just simply, trying to, like, show you, I mean, a unit that is very, very similar to the unit that, I remember at that apple orchard when I was a kid that was, like, very appealing to me. So it's called Old Frigidaire Units. Of course, it's not my video. I mean, I'm not trying to, like, invade anybody's privacy. All I'm wanting to do is show you all an external drive, condenser that I remember at that apple orchard as knee-high to a grasshopper, and just was in the mood to reminisce tonight, and, just sharing all my, great memories for all you, like, folks out there that, are in the, have a hobby of, like, pondering on, like, vintage and ancient, like, stuff, appliances, units, and all that stuff. I mean, like me. And so anyway, I mean, just click on the video, enjoy it, and I hope you enjoyed this video as well, and have a great weekend.